Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Kepra release party. I'm Imhotep, and I'm gonna give a brief story about Kepra. A parable is what I was asked to do. I'll do the best I can with that, and I will honor the time component related to that. And so here we go. So I'm Imhotep, one of the founders of the Kepra Institute, along with Pambana, who you'll meet soon. I'm a wife and the mother of Diop. And the Kepler story. I said, well, what do I want to talk about? I said, well, probably should talk about the birth of the Kepler Institute, given that there may be some folks on the call or brand new to the Kepler experience. I said, okay, well, the Kepler Institute, it actually started about 20 years ago. I said, but really, is that where I want to start? I said, no, I don't think I want to start there. I think I want to start with how did I become a community wealth builder, quote unquote. And I said, well, actually, back as a young person in college, we were involved in the some of the challenges of that space during the South Africa apartheid movement in college and other spaces along that lines. And in college, actually, that's where I met Pambana, who was going to a different school studying engineering, and we met to pull a conference together related to some work in building and restoring a community as we see it. And so I thought, well, is that really the origin story? And I got to thinking, no, actually, it goes at least back to our parents. And so I'm going to share a little bit about my parents and then a little bit about the other pieces of that story. So, my mother's from Canton, Mississippi, and my dad is from Jackson, Mississippi. And a very, very, very long time ago. I'm blessed that my mother's still alive. She's 90 years old. She still bosses me around. When Diop gets online, I get a phone call. Say, "Em, what are you doing? Can you talk to that boy?" So that is a part of the story for me about how we got here. And I got to think, well, how did that happen? Well, that came out of the Great Migration when people of color, black folks from the South, they said, got to get the hell out of here. And then we moved north because we thought the pastures were greener. So, long stories of history of people of color, enslaved Africans, who, in spite of the challenges of structural racism, created and found ways to make ways out of no way. Resistance, resilience, and creation. And then between the time we talked earlier, I said, well, what else do I want to say about community wealth building prior to getting into the particular pieces about this particular Kepler initiative? I said, well, actually, it starts with cooperation. And from cooperation, we go to collaboration. And then for Kepler, that also leads to institution building grounded in self-reliance and self-determination. So cooperation does not mean agreement. It means you get together, you look at what you perceive the world to be, you have serious discussions, dialogue, debate, that then leads to some consensus. The consensus is the component that leads to collaboration, and it's always a work in progress. The idea about self-reliance and self-determination is about creation and creating institutions that allow, in this case, black folks, people of color, to find ways to support each other in communities in spite of the challenges that we've historically have found ourselves in, past and present. So that's kind of the narrative about my involvement in that. And then I said, well, okay, well, how did I come to meet the other co-founder? I don't know if Paulette's here yet or not. Paulette Fair. And she,
Yes, sir.
hey. So you now got the other co-founder on our meet, the 78 year young, vibrant Paulette Fair. So about 34 years ago, we were involved in a black book study discussion. To this day, people still talk about, and it took place at Coppin Chapel over on on Capitol in AME Church. And we would come together, 40, 50 people every 2 weeks, and talk about important work, historical works, the black experience, the African experience, and the stories of resistance, resilience, and institution building. And so that's where I met Paulette and her husband, Turner Fair, and that would begin the connection of our relationship with each other. But her personal narrative story comes out of the same kind of migration stories of black folks working in community to support each other through what we're calling and have called a community wealth building model. I think, can you see the African chart behind me? Is the African chart visible behind me,
Yeah,
guys?
you can
Okay.
see it.
So the African chart is one of the products that we offer that supports our work currently. It's a social enterprise. Actually, Paulette's husband created the first chart, Turner Fair, one of my mentors, and he actually decided to leave his professional day job making a ton of money because this chart, he's a self-taught historian. He said this is something that we need to have in our communities to tell the stories of our people and our relationship to humanity from ages old. All right, so with that said, I now want to say a little bit about what do we mean, Kepler, about community wealth building, and then after I share a little bit about that, I'll say a little bit about the how we got to the birth of the KIF Alchemy space. So, for us, community wealth building is made up of about 4 or 5 key themes. Now, of course, when we talk about wealth these days, we're always talking about where's the money at? Where's the financial capital to do what we need to do? It's an important piece of the story, but it's not the only piece of wealth building. Community wealth building also includes what we call relationship capital, often referred to as social capital, but we want to place the emphasis on relationship as primary, even more important than social. So you need social capital because you got relationships that connect to other things, but you could be a social capitalist that's hoarding the resources for your own self-interest that don't actually necessarily lead to relationship building and community wealth building. So we distinguish our definition by placing the emphasis on relationships. We also feel in the Kepler space that relationships is one of the most important resources, if not the most important resource any community has. Our relationship with other people in our communities, our relationships with ourselves, and then through those kinds of things, we collectively figure out how to work and build community together. So relationship capital, financial capital, we already talked a little bit about. Intellectual capital, and that's the knowledge in your communities, and that knowledge can be all kinds of knowledge types. It could be, hey, who's the best chef in your neighborhood? Do you know who they are? Call so and so on up. They can, girl, let me get this sandwich recipe. Hook me up. Show me how to do this. Intellectual capital. It could be, homeboy's a lawyer over there. Give him up, talk to him. So your intellectual capital is a critical part of your community wealth building also. Cultural capital, often undervalued, and that often it transmits itself through the artists. The artists in our communities actually, if we're honest about it, they tend to be the parables of the sword, those that can see the future and the present articulated through song, music, writing, fashion, and so those are the physical language. Those are the physical manifestations of cultural capital. And I think I'll end my capital narrative with spiritual capital. And that's particularly for people of color, black folks. Our relationship with a power greater than ourselves has really been a significant part of our own journey to, in spite of the challenges and the obstacles and what looks like there's no way you can even move forward. It's our faith. However you practice it, in whatever form you practice it in, that then gives us the courage and resilience to continue to find ways out of no way. And so for Kepler, those are the ideas around community wealth building that we want to emphasize. So how did we get to KIF? Uh, KIF has always been grinding with entrepreneurship. We birthed it and out of the need and importance of having a enterprise component to our work to support our self-reliance and self-determining model in our work. I think there's a song, I think it was Diana Washington, it might have been Billie Holiday, that said, God blesses the child that has his own. And so if you have a piece of your work control that you make decisions about that are within your control, then your ability to set and create your own outcomes are just enhanced. And we all know when your resource base is tied to sources and forces that are not necessarily have your best interest in mind, then we already know what the potential outcomes and consequences are. So we have always built our work around incorporating entrepreneurship as a critical part of the narrative. And so with that, we then actually we had the opportunity through our relationships to be involved with a project called Forward Cities a few years ago. And out of that, and that was because Khalid said, I need you guys in the room because this space needs a community voice, a grassroots voice, and Kepler is the best voice in the entrepreneurial space to provide that. So we participated in that. And then I said, well, actually, we do have something to contribute to this space. And we then decided, let's open the Alchemy Center up at 38th Street. So when we did that, we then actually, again through relationships, met Deb with Boston Impact Initiative. That was about a little over 2 years ago. And they had launched a national initiative to show community folks how to do financing in a high level fund management, investment equity strategy. So we participated in that for 2 years. Of course, when it jumped off, it was pre-pandemic. The pandemic hit, everything went virtual, and we went through that participation. But in order to do that, they said, well, yeah, Kepler, we'd love to have y'all involved, along with 18 other cities around the country. But you got to have one of the two folks involved have to come out of a finance background. Social capital. We went back to the streets, talked with some of our folks in that space. Kiff, who's with Scenario, said, "Hey man, Kiff, we looking for somebody to join us that's got background in finance." I said, "Well, I got somebody for you. I want to introduce you to Nicholas, who's on the call. You'll get to meet him soon. And of course, he's not going to talk a lot about his background, but 20 plus years in the game, and he was looking for more, doing something different." Doing something more community-minded. So we had lunch, felt great. Boom, he signed up. We joined the cohort, and so here we are. And so that's really the nature of this particular part of the journey, what I like to call the next a major release album, the EP release for the Kepler Institute, the Kiff Fund, along with the Alchemy piece, which you'll hear more about from the real experts in the room. With that said, I'd like to turn it over to the J-Roo to show the Kepler story. From there, we'll roll out of that into the next piece of the program. Thank you guys so much.
Community means something different round here. Love's breeding ground born new, blossoming into barraging stories of blackness, banter, and bustle through blues like blood couldn't make us any closer. This be communion.
Growing community is like growing food. It's a lot of work. You gotta till the soil, you gotta plant the seeds, You gotta have the right weather conditions. So community is just like that. You start with what you have where you are.
KIF is a nonprofit grassroots organization that was created roughly about 20 years ago. And when it was created by my father, my mother, and my godmother. They're the three co-founders. And they created it to help me, Miss Paulette's grandson, my lifelong, he's like a brother, Ijaz. Some of my partners I grew up with, Jerome and Jerome, in my neighborhood. It's basically like, hey, how do we create a formal experience for these young black men to grow, thrive?
The birth of KEPRA is about, again, inherently, the crux of KEPRA is tied to liberation and freedom. Freedom to me is having a goal or goals, aspirations, dreams, visions, and missions, and being able to have the opportunity to fulfill those goals, aspirations, visions, and missions.
Empowerment means to me like you get something right. You do what you want to do. You figure out what's your goal and you set your goal.
Running to get it like I'm in the Olympics, but there is no finish. We gotta keep going, so I set the pace. Handle with grace, the person I need to be leading the race. Ballin' like I never balled before. Flexing forever like 24. Taking the keys, open all the doors. Linings to cover up all the sores. Give it your best and the world adores. This is for certain, I'm so for sure.
We live in a culture, when you think of wealth, you think of money. How much money you got? What's your credit rating? Do you have any intergenerational wealth? Do you own a home ownership, blah, 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 blah. If you're not careful when you think community wealth, then the folks start thinking, oh, you know about how rich your community is, how much fiscal assets does it have. But wealth itself really is much broader than that. It's your intellectual wealth. What kind of information do you know? Others in your community, what do they know? Breadth and depth of your relationship with others in your community. Spiritual wealth, faith, your heart, music, art, those things all make up wealth in your community.
The old saying goes, your good deeds start at home. To grow community means to grow the space that you will be in. Even though that's not something you might wake up in the morning and strive for, to grow community and to grow individuals is something intrinsically that's there. You might not intentionally think on it, but that's where we all live. How will we be okay in the future? Is today putting us in a place that we will want to be tomorrow?
Community empowerment is agency and liberation. It is when community recognizes power that they already have. When oftentimes empowerment is used in spaces and by people, it's usually like, I give you this power. But there's no giving power, we all have power.
And everything KEPRA does is grounded in the process over the product. The symbolism of the dung beetle is that you are constantly, you're in this evolutionary process that's gonna take you through a rough road. It is the human experience inevitable. Similar to cells, similar to a seed, there is a process to get you there. And it is not without obstacles and inhibition, all those things you carry.
A safe space for genuine laughter, hugs like healing in the easiest language, lacking nothing while lifting all things into liberalizing intellect, our preferred mode of freedom. Libraries, dancing around in the spines of our elders' tongues, coded in valuables, actual gems, reaping return on investment. We be the sum of our ancestors' wildest dreams. The hope of a mother's heart, the block turned classroom, trial and error over adolescence, learning the most teachable moments rest within the mistakes. This be education, they say.
Community empowerment, what I think it means is when you work with other people in your community and help each other out with some things you might need help on. Well, in this one, we got a lot of agriculture, gardening and stuff. So, for example, someone might need compost and someone else might have that, and they'll do a nice trade-off for that.
Nobody comes to the world by themselves, at least not often. And nobody gets anything done without being connected to other human beings. On the future state, it's real simple and not simple to do, and we as humans, we may not get it done. Reconnect ourselves to our own humanity. You do something for somebody, you feel good about it. You can't go in the store and buy it. There is no transactional activity. You can go and buy that. That feeling you get from helping another human being.
Generations and generations generated a plethora of material they manipulated to control, superimpose on those they chose. It's time to reclaim, resist, renew. It's time to replenish, revise, redo.
The future exists in the present. So right now the future is right here in front of us, or multiple futures might be here in front of us, but we have to be looking at it to see it, to experience it. The world we're trying to create, I think, is a world that puts at least some more balance in how we interact with each other as human beings, period.
It's the culture that we start with and push out into our community through our lived experience.
Someone writes a novel or a biography about you, but you have the opportunity to deny that and write your own. It's just about being able to control your narrative, control your destiny. That's self-determination. I'm not asking anybody else to define it for me. I'm not even asking the dominant narrative to accept my version of reality. I don't care. All I care about is manifesting it with those that I build genuine relationships with. That's it. So I'm not asking somebody else to give me justice. I'm trying to create a world where I can leverage justice on my own terms. Why ask?
Growth is dependent upon the whole, nourishing the self so all of community feels like home. Self-care be synonymous with community work, inextricably bound in praxis, purpose, and passion, but the profit is one we've already gained, one we've already had. Radical love rooted in relationship, a kind of currency invisible to the natural eye but present in action, in theory and in practice. And in true community wealth building fashion, we have always been the greatest gift to ourselves.
Okay, that was as powerful as always. You can't get enough of watching that video, man. I'm gonna pass it now over to Diop, who's gonna introduce the alchemy component of the work.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Hope everyone's doing good this evening. So I'm Diop. I've been a long-time member with the KIF Institute, and I'll just say a few words about alchemy and then pass it to my brother Damon. So this past fall, we had the completion of our first cohort in the Alchemy Incubator, and we probably had about roughly 30 participants, mostly people of color. In that experience, of course, we provided experiences around the practical and tangible skills and frameworks you need to run a business or be an entrepreneur. But I think our unique offering in that space was around culture, in a particular type of culture around cooperative economics, collaborative and collective decision-making, shared prosperity. And for businesses of color, we feel it is critical to have a culture that puts them in the best position to provide to their community, but also be sustainable. And that looks and feels differently than the dominant narrative about what business looks and feels like, because our journey in this experience is different. And I feel that was our best offering, given that that is what Kepler has used to sustain itself for the last 20 years, as well as incubate entrepreneurs internally for the last 20 years. So a heavy emphasis on the culture in which we feel is sustainable, is pro-people over profit, and is working towards a desired future state that we believe will be very much beautiful and bountiful for us all. Another thing I'll say that I think was very powerful for the incubator is basically creating a digital space for entrepreneurs to build relationship and share with each other, and not feel that they have to leave their culture at the door, or that people can't relate to the experiences they're having on their entrepreneurial journey. I think having that space and allowing those entrepreneurs to create genuine relationships around their shared experience is critical to having a robust entrepreneurial environment. So that's what I wanted to share about Alchemy, and in particular, the cultural elements we spend a lot of time on that we feel are extremely important when it comes to community wealth building. And I'll pass it to Damon to share a little bit more about the project in and of itself.
Thanks, Diop. And like everybody said on the conversation, when we talk about community wealth building, we talk about social capital, cultural capital, intellectual capital, financial capital, and even spiritual capital. And as one part of Kepler's community wealth building initiative, working with Kiff on the support financial side, we tend to focus on what does community wealth building look like in action. And so at Alchemy, it's really about making something out of nothing. And so when we talk about that, we break that into essentially 3 programs: the Alchemy Incubator, the Alchemy Accelerator, and then also our Alchemy Social Enterprise Resource Center on 38th and Illinois. And so, like Diop said, we launched a couple pilot programs prior to COVID, but completed our first 20 to 30 person cohort at the end of last year. And that was in our incubator program. And most importantly, around our incubator program is working with those early stage entrepreneurs, 1 to 2 years in the game, those just looking to kind of dip their toe in entrepreneurship, and really, more importantly than anything, really building a community of support and a safe space for those entrepreneurs, particularly BIPOC entrepreneurs who are usually marginalized when it comes to financing, when it comes to business support, et cetera, et cetera. And so what that grew into is just essentially a 9-week program where we go through a number of workshops, talking about things from defining community wealth, the art of the start, connecting to your dream client, pitch perfect, communicating your value in your company. And we also talked about things in terms of, what is community wealth? What are people-centered habits? How do you build a relational culture in your organization? Primarily focusing on those entrepreneurs that are socially minded in our space here in Central Indianapolis. We're launching our incubator program again in the fall, and we're really looking forward to some of the learnings that we had in that program and bringing on an additional 20 or so cohorts in that space. And that'll be an ongoing program. And that's really what the beauty of what came out of the initial launch of the program is that even to this day, after the program, we still have entrepreneurs from years ago, just getting started. They still attend regular mentor group sessions, and we just really share with each other. And as part of that, really looking at how do we build community wealth from a cooperative ecosystem standpoint, focusing here on local economies in Central Indianapolis. And again, focusing on those socially conscious artists, entrepreneurs, organizers who have an idea, an incubation of a small idea that they think can make a big impact in community. And I think even today we have some of our people here as well that are in the program, and it's really an opportunity to give back. We encourage to keep coming to those spaces, but it's a combination of that: workshops, mentor peer groups, and then finally we also support our entrepreneurs with technical assistance that we wrap around the entrepreneurs as they go through the 9-week program, really focusing on what we can do to kind of help them get into the best foot forward for when they're launching their business out of the program, our social enterprise out of the program. I'll let, with our focus being on not just entrepreneurs, but artists, entrepreneurs, and organizers, I'll point it over to Maurice, who was one of the mentors, particularly with the Artist Collective, Cafe Creative Collective, that side of the Alchemy Incubator. Maurice.
Hi, hi. My name is Maurice Broadus, and I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, and I'm the Kepler Institute's resident Afrofuturist. I've been in the Kepler waters for about 4 to 5 years now, and originally Cafe Creative was the brainchild of Diop, recognizing that Kepler needed to be more in the art space, kind of wanting to meet artists at their place of need, basically figuring out how best we could support them, be it through like skill shares or social capital, just building with one another through conversations with the eventual goal of having a venue space that we control. I joined Cafe Creative at that time, just prior to the pandemic. But once the pandemic happened, that put a kind of a pause on things. But it also allowed our vision to continue to evolve and adapt, especially adapt to the circumstances we found ourselves in. It kind of shifted more, concentrating on becoming a relational network. It kind of started off of my front porch with community artists just coming by. It evolved into more mentoring and becoming relationship building. And then it became part of Alchemy, or actually probably was always a part of Alchemy. When we think about it, it was the part of Alchemy that faced the artists, right? And so we had a cohort of artists who went through the program, being grounded in the idea of community wealth building. I served as the mentor for our cohort. Anna Tragesser was our coach, and once we went through Alchemy, the cohort just sort of self-organized into Cafe Creative. We continue to meet on Mondays from 6 to 8. And we focus mostly on being a relationship building space, a healing space, a collaborative space, with an eye on how we as artists can just come together and create sort of a relationship-based infrastructure that can support one another and contribute to community wealth building. That's Cafe Creative.
Thanks, Maurice.
I'll turn it back to Damon.
Thanks. And so you see, as we kind of develop this laboratory for what community wealth building looks like in action, the Alchemy Incubator is a vital role to that program. It may not look the same year over year, but we just continue to build on the learnings as a learning organization for what best suits local economies, BIPOC, socially minded entrepreneurs. Now, our accelerator program is a little bit more focused, a little bit more curated on those organizations, still socially minded with a heavy emphasis on scale, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from an impact standpoint. We do a lot more cross collaboration with our KIF group. And as we're shaping out that program as a 9-month program to really help organizations scale, we're looking to launch that in the fall of this year. And then lastly, kind of our third leg of the Alchemy initiative and our Alchemy program is the Alchemy Social Enterprise Resource Center, which we're really excited about. There's architectural plans that we've shared, converting the 38th and Illinois location. If you haven't seen it, there's a big dung beetle in a big circle. I think it's the biggest light on that corner. But that is going to be our, just really our hub for community wealth building, for community building even. As there'll be a number of programs in there, but what we really want to make an emphasis about was making sure that it was a safe space, a co-working space, co-event space for our entrepreneurs who are looking, whether they're from the ground up or they've been in it for a minute, just to really, again, bring cooperation together and really build a nucleus in the ecosystem in our organization, in our organization and in our local community, that we hope to serve as a model for other communities who are looking to build community wealth. And so, in conclusion, a large part of what we did when we started Alchemy was just when we started our community wealth building initiative, was just making sure that we had programs at every stage of the entrepreneurial social enterprise journey. And with that being said, I'll pass it over to our sister organization, which is KIF, the Kepler Integrated Fund.
Okay, greetings, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with you. and tell you a little bit about why we created the Kepler Integrated Fund, which we call KIF. I think I got it clicked on that screen. Let's see, share. Okay. Okay, so I am Pambana Uishi, and I am the financial lead at the Kepler Institute. And we, of course, everyone knows that entrepreneurs need access to financial capital. And so we decided to create an integrated fund, and we actually launched the Kepler Integrated Fund in 2020. And we started with emergency relief grants. And those were to artists, entrepreneurs, and then families for like utility, mortgage, and rental assistance. And now we're at the point where like Em said, we're getting ready to offer our next offering, which is the Recoverable Loan Program. But, as a people of resistance, self-determination, we know that we have the gifts, the talents, the abilities to create the world we want to live in and we want to have our children live in. And that for us, we believe that if we harness the power of communities of color, especially Black communities, we can create vibrant, equitable, sustainable, locally controlled economies of shared prosperity. So that's what we're about. And then as was shared earlier, so it's not just about money or financial capital, but that we have gifts and talents in terms of our culture, in terms of the knowledge and skills that we have, and of course, our relationships, and then spiritual, which kind of, ties through all of those, spirit that drives us, to do what we do and to be resilient and to continue to work and strive to create the community that we know, we want to have and we can have, and we are committed to bringing about. And so, like others said, for us, providing financial capital is a part of it, but we're not, trying to create businesses that just want to get rich themselves, but that are really invested in, the community and providing a viable service and sharing prosperity, through a number of different ways, whether that be through employment, whether it be through as they grow, others can get a return on that, whether it be through supporting other activities that are taking place in community. But for us, it's very important that it be about shared prosperity and how we can all benefit and thrive and grow. And so as shared earlier, we have the Kepler Integrated Fund is a component of the Kepler Social Enterprise Center. And so for us, it's not just about providing money, it's about developing a relationship with the entrepreneurs and then partnering with them for them to be successful, because if they're successful, then our communities benefit and we all prosper. So we're looking, to see again, are there technical assistance that they need? Is there coaching that they need? Can we couple that with financial capital, and what kind of financial capital? And we want to make sure that it's patient capital that helps, like I said, businesses to grow, to expand, to contribute to community, and to help our communities prosper. So, and then I want to say, like others said, that, Kepler as a grassroots organization, we have built and sustained our organization through entrepreneurship. And we've had a number of social enterprises. We had a Good Stuff thrift store. We had a Miss Tint paint store. We have new media, which was graphics, video, and those kind of things. But again, as Em said, nobody comes into the world by themselves. And we couldn't have done what we've done without community. And no entrepreneur can, grow and thrive without community as well. So for us, it really is about focusing on the relationships, focusing on investing in our communities, and focusing on all of us prospering together. And so, because capital is an important part of that, we decided to launch the Kepler Integrated Fund to provide grants, and now we're getting ready to provide loans. And we feel like the potential is great in the context of where we can take this and all the things that we'll be able to do. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it over to what I feel like is our financial genius guru, Nicholas, and he can talk more about the Recoverable Loan Program and take you through the application and things like that. So Nicholas, take it away. You're muted, dear.
Just like in a regular meeting, right? She does that for me in a regular meeting. So I feel at home right now. This is how it normally goes. Again, I'm Nicholas, as Pabana said, Nicholas Johnson. My role is as a fund manager for the KIF to work in concert with Pabana and M, the whole entire team, to work with Damon and Diop on the Alchemy side. Work with a lot of our third-party vendors in terms of who, and you'll get to see some of the work that they've done in support of our work. Imhotep already spoke to the power of the relationship that was formed between the Keppel Institute and BII, the Boston Impact Initiative, and their leadership over there, and how that, that meeting 2 years ago and the 18-month experience of working with, 11 other cities, or being, part of that cohort, how it contributed to our ability to not only develop the investment thesis and the criteria that we wanted, but really to kind of formulate, the strategies that we needed in terms of implementation. So what has really been kind of a big part of this is that this whole progression that you see from Imhotep's initial introduction all the way to now, which is where you just constantly see this growth and trajectory in the delivery and the building of a toolbox. So you're going to hear me say that word toolbox. And it for someone like myself who's been doing this, for like 25 years, I know how important the toolbox is, and I felt like at every step, building that toolbox has been what kind of made the difference, whether that was, doing redevelopment in Austin, Texas, or Louisiana, and in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, or redeveloping downtown Fort Wayne, or doing, projects, pretty much got projects all over Indianapolis that I've been a part of. So it's, in other places. So it's, very proud for us to be able to roll out what is really like Pabana said, the second program. And so with that, I'm gonna go ahead and share screen, bring you over to the Recoverable Loan Program guidelines, and we're gonna go through them, and then we'll talk about process and timeline for how the program works. And then we're gonna take a few minutes to do a demo. So you're gonna hear my voice for probably about the next 15 minutes, but hopefully you will build a lot of questions that we'll be able to address when we get to the end of it. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can all right. I'll make sure we can see this. Scroll back up to the top. So the Keppel Integrated Fund, it's been well introduced. We already know about 20-year history of KI and all the great things that have been done here. One of the things that I feel like really kind of married the two for me is that you see the work that was being done historically, and then you just see this as, like I said, a natural progression. And so when we start talking about capital, which, we don't want people to feel like, capital is something that you only talk about in the context of well, it's going to the bank, it's going to the credit union, it's going to private equity, it's going to, what has been developing over the last, since the mid-90s, the CDFI industry with all the different CDFIs, but the continued evolution of that is the development of these what we call charitable loan funds. And so the Keppel Integrated Fund that is but the charitable loan. It is in the first charitable loan fund in the state of Indiana. Okay, and there's not many across the United States, which makes this even more interesting because we'll talk about some of the things that you can do with it. But one of the things that you can do with it, of course, is you can lend money. And with the Recoverable Loan Program, as one of the tools in the toolbox that do both debt and equity, the Recoverable Loan Programs allows Kepler to basically put together short-term and medium-term, socially responsible capital, to support projects and enterprises and initiatives. So now we're getting beyond the normal scope of what you would traditionally see if you were to go to a traditional bank. It's not just a business. It can be an enterprise that can be nonprofit or for-profit based, which kind of tells you about the broad scope of some of the eligible entities and persons. So you can be nonprofit or for-profit. You can be formed in many different types of ways. You can operate as a sole proprietorship, a LLC if you choose to incorporate, or a partnership, a LP or LLP, or if you've been in, operation for a while and you've kind of went through that progression, or you started out there and built into a corporation, we can work with on that end. The one key element that we hold true, and which I think you've probably already picked up on the theme here, is that with everyone that we work with, it has to be within the investment thesis and the community wealth building criteria. And of course, with the RLP, each program that we roll out over the course of from now until hopefully, for years to come, each program will come with its own set of guidelines. But again, it'll be just another tool in the toolbox. So very broad in terms of who can be eligible to access the program. Scrolling down here, the target enterprises. So we have some things that we feel are near and dear to the heart, to our hearts and our communities when we start thinking about getting capital into communities that have been disenfranchised, disinvested for many years. So first thing that comes to mind in terms of enterprises and industries, we think about cooperative space is such a beautiful space for a charitable loan fund and for a community wealth building initiative. Cooperatives, they basically have all these certain types of elements that allow for, not only profit sharing, but if they incorporate, you can do stock, employee stock options and, all these different things that you can do with a cooperative, shared ownership. There's, I think we talked about this before, but one of the largest and most successful cooperatives, of course, is, State Farm. So you think about it, it's not just cooperatives in the sense of just food, which is pretty well known, cooperatives in the terms of utilities and things of that nature, but really, there's really not a limit to where you can go with cooperatives. One of the things that, of course, near and dear to our hearts in Indianapolis is the fact that where, India is famous for our food deserts, right? We have all these neighborhoods and parts of our community where people have to go extreme amount of distances to get to, a full-fledged grocery store where we can, get all the healthy foods and all the things that you would need and want, every household in your community to have access to. So when we talk about affordable housing, when we look at it from the recoverable loan standpoint and look at it from a community wealth building standpoint, we're really looking at those who are the what we would consider, our low and moderate income, but really targeting, like our working poor, people who are in that 30% to 60% area median income. So, we want to try to add affordable housing to our market, and we want to support both keeping existing affordable housing, and we want to support both adding new housing as well. Of course, a lot of our neighborhoods go through different levels of transition and turnover, whether that's through changes in demographics, changes in enterprises and businesses that are in the neighborhood. But we want to support mixed use development, the combination of commercial and residential all being developed together. We want to support that. But as well, we want to think about having neighborhood facilities whether it's technology centers, gymnasiums, parks. We want, we want those things to be a part of it and built into the way we, we look at community wealth building. We want, each neighborhood to feel like, they have those type of assets that are, of high quality and are accessible and affordable. Of course, we learned during the pandemic, childcare and healthcare really are not equal. And so we feel like, the Charitable Loan Fund investing in childcare and the Recoverable Loan Fund being, kind of our initial entry to expand childcare access and healthcare access. That means supporting entrepreneurs who want to start healthcare related businesses. Very proud to say I've got a daughter who is, she's doing a doctorate in occupational therapy, and she wants to come back to India and start a practice and service. She was very close to my grandmother, so she wants to service elderly population. And of course, me being a veteran, she wants to take care of veterans. Her grandfather's a veteran as well. So we really feel like, childcare and healthcare are elements that we need to try to focus on. Of course, I believe Diop and Damon, they spoke about how art and entertainment, and then Marcus also as well. And, we want to continue to expand on that. Really don't see any limits to what art and entertainment can be. We want to see, we want to help bring out all that talent in the young people, and actually anyone, doesn't matter age. We just want people to see if they're one of the creatives, we want to give them a space and opportunity and access to capital to try to develop that. We think about being socially responsible because of renewable energy. I mean, if you went to the gas pumps here and saw the $4 gas, you probably think, we got to figure out ways to support enterprises that and do developments that support renewable energy. So we want to do that. And then of course, technology, 55% of all new jobs created are knowledge jobs. So technology is a huge part of it, information technology. Everything that you would include, in the STEM categories of science, technology, energy, engineering. So we just want to be conscious of, we understand the environment that we live in and where we're trying to go. In terms of target location, we have two. So we want to focus on our low and moderate income neighborhoods in Indianapolis as our primary target area. And then as a secondary, we're going to focus on the incorporated city limits of Indianapolis, Marion County. And that's where we're going to put these dollars at, and we see that, there's a lot of opportunity. We got a, 400 in, I think, 15 or 20 square mile city. So there's a lot of space to basically put those dollars. In terms of eligible uses of funds, right off the bat, we want to make sure that people know working capital is always on the table, because we're not only interested in jobs and operations and making sure that BIPOC enterprises are not being underfunded. I think that's one of the things that in my career that I've seen is that, working capital is probably one of the toughest things to get access to. And here we are in an environment where, interest rates are going to be going up, especially in the commercial space. If you don't get access to government subsidized loans or guaranteed loans, whether through SBA or USDA or any other federal or state organization, paying market rate interest rates are going to be tough, especially when we're expecting to have maybe 5 raises, with one coming here, potentially here in the next few weeks. And then we want to focus on equipment, furniture, fixtures. I mean, these aren't things that a lot of financial institutions want to finance in the traditional sense, because, this whole idea of depreciating assets, right? And then inventory, things of that nature. Now, real estate, we talked about earlier, we're looking at both commercial and residential. But in this side, we're playing both sides of the fence. We're playing the soft cost and the hard cost side of the fence, which is that we're looking at, we know that to get a lot of projects started, soft costs can become a barrier to doing that. Sometimes the initial land acquisition can be a barrier. Sometimes, getting that initial lease or to do some leasehold improvements, all those can be a barrier. Many times more than not, they're not the most attractive things that a lot of lenders want to put their capital into because, again, going back to that traditional structure and a traditional institutional, metrics that you need collateral. And so we're not bound by any of those things. So we want to make sure that, that that's available. Last but not least, we talk about terms and conditions and then focus on some of the highlights of the program. So, the amount of these dollars for any individual or, small business or initiative or enterprises from $5,000 to $15,000. The interest rate is 0 to 1% and it compounds monthly. So there's not an excessive amount of interest that's being accrued. The term is generally 3 to 12 months in terms of the duration or in the payback period. And then the amortization is based on a balloon structure, which is where the principal and interest is repaid at the maturity of that term. So, you don't have any principal and interest payments necessarily. So, you can take advantage of that and use those resources to really invest in things that don't necessarily have to produce immediate returns day one. You can take a more strategic view and be more aggressive in the growth of your business and making sure that the foundation is strong. In terms of collateral, I think I said earlier, this is not a collateral-driven loan program, the Recoverable Loan Program. Collateral is based, it's determined doing underwriting, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then in terms of guarantee, we're not asking for personal guarantees generally. And so, these are just basically business loans, small business loans or enterprise level loans, whether that's at the sole proprietorship level. We will have some fees just, of course, because of the maintenance and operation of the program. But the origination fee can be anywhere from 0 to 2%. And the loan servicing fee is anywhere from 1 to 2%. And I can talk about that a little bit later in terms of how that's structured. The origination fee happens right at close and the servicing fee is built into the repayment, okay? So some highlights or some incentives. We have 8 listed there, and I think I've got another one that came up that I'm gonna throw in there. So no down payment or equity requirements. So literally you can request $5,000 to $15,000 without there having to be some type of match or down payment or, what we used to call skin in the game from the entrepreneur. We know that there's other intellectual and there's other sweat equity and there's other relationship and other forms of capital that Imhotep and Pabana spoke about earlier that we see as having, the relationships, all that having value. So it's not just a monetary, intangible down payment that we're looking for. It's not required at all. We don't have a appraisal requirement for real estate deals. And we don't have a requirement for having market studies. Many times on real estate deals, if you incur these out-of-pocket expenses and while you're doing your due diligence, it just kind of increases the exposure, and sometimes it delays projects or it makes projects that should happen and could happen, it becomes a deterrent. And these are things that later in the process, when you get into bigger sums of money, you can start to add some of these requirements, but at this level, we don't see that they're being necessary. We can use the 5 to 15K can be used for equity requirements to secure funding from some of our partner CDFIs and credit unions and banks who do require 5 or 10% borrow equity requirements. I mean, think about a SBA 504 loan that requires a 10% down payment. Well, even at 15,000, that can get you access to 150,000. On an SBA Community Advantage loan, which can go up to 250, or SBA micro enterprise loan that goes up to 50,000. You know, they still have these borrower equity requirements, and you can match these sorts of these funds with the Recoverable Loan Program to help you secure these larger amounts of funding. The RLLP can be used in participation loans and co-lending. I guess the good thing about having been in India and done quite a bit of lending for a period of time is that I know a lot of people who are in the lending space, as well as the rest of our team at Kepler. And so we have relationships that we've built already, and we have relationships outside the state as well, where we can support, that we can have other funds that can partner with us and support investment opportunities and enterprises and different initiatives. And then one of the things that we wanted to point out is that although we have the balloon at the end, if the borrower wants to, they can elect to pay the interest so that it doesn't compound, which will save them some money. But again, the interest rate is only 0 to 1, so it's minimal, but we do give that option. And then the closing costs, I spoke earlier about that 1%, 0 to 2% origination fee that can actually be taken out of the proceeds. And then I think another item that was brought to my attention is that, and I feel like you probably haven't heard me say anything about a minimum credit score, because we don't have one. And so I didn't mention it, and it's not in there because it don't exist. So, these are all things that we feel are, make this program strong. So that's the Recoverable Loan Program in terms of its guidelines. The next thing I want to do is talk about the timing and talk about process. So I'm gonna.
Hey, Nicholas, I want to share with you 5 more minutes to kind of go through the demo and the process and things like that, dear.
Okay, excellent. So here, let me get out of that and flip over. So in terms of our process and timeline, we start out with an inquiry. We have a contact email at impactfund@kepler.org, and we schedule an appointment with an individual who has an interest in applying for the program. And so we start there. And then the next thing we do is we do an initial interview, which is we have both KIF staff, and we also have Alchemy staff that participate in that. We have intake specialists, a fund manager, myself, and Alchemy coaches and supervisors like a Damon and Diop and other individuals that are part of the team as well. And so we do that initial interview. And then from there, we make a decision, do we need to refer this opportunity for additional TA with Alchemy, or is this opportunity ready to move forward for funding? If it's ready for funding, then we will, we're gonna get to a point where I'll show you the link to the Kepler Turnkey Lender platform, but we'll basically create a username and password. There's about a 30-field application that is submitted, and you can come in and out of it because the username and password are basically your username and password until you need to change it or something like that. But you can go in and out of it as you work through the application. Once the application is completed, we set a meeting to review the application and submit it through with the staff. So once we are there, the next thing we want to do is finish the intake process, and then upload any supporting documents that are necessary or part of the deal. And then we want to get it into underwriting. Underwriting normally takes about 2 to 5 days. And then once underwriting is complete, there might be some back and forth with the borrower or with the enterprise or entrepreneur. But normally we can get through underwriting in about 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the deal. straight working capital deal versus a, something that has, multiple lenders or part of a bigger capital stack, then it may be a little bit more detail. We do have a small deals committee, and many of those individuals may be on this call. I think I saw of the 25 participants, I saw Kalia, and I'll point you out again later at the end, but we have Howard Stevenson. We have a whole panel that includes both KIF staff, volunteers in the community, different professionals and experts in the community in different areas that we feel support this initiative. But the Small Deals Committee meets 2 times per month, which gives you basically 2 bites at the apple, and normally within a couple of weeks of getting through underwriting, we can get you to one of those 2 small deal committee meetings. 2 things happen there. So if the deal is approved, a term sheet goes out, basically outlining the terms and conditions of the funding, and then the applicant has 7 days to accept or reject the offer. The closing process is roughly anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, depending on if there's collateral or no collateral, meaning with or without collateral, and if it's co-lending or participation loan and things like that that need to be worked out with other lenders. But from start to beginning, we want to be able to get these deals closed anywhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And again, that depends on the complexity of it. But of course, knowing that we have a small deals committee, all those deals have to go through that committee, and making sure that we stay committed to the process. Now I'm gonna take you to the platform, the kepper.turnkeylender.com /account/login. Let's go there. And I want to show you switch here. Okay. Hold on here. Nice. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Should come up here in just a second. All right. Hopefully you can see that. So this is our online platform with Turnkey Lender, who powers our platform. Here you'll see that there's a login in the upper right-hand corner. Here you'll see that the loan terms. You create an account. I spoke earlier about there being a username and a password, and then you fill out the application. Here you just click in the dollar amount. You can change it anywhere from that 5,000 to the 15,000, right? And then of course here you change the term if you want to do the 3 months or 12 months. And then you go from there. I'm gonna click log in. I created one here, so you see there's a login and a password. Logging in now, and I'm gonna take you to the application. Okay, so here you have the application. You have personal information with your first name, last name, date of birth, personal email, and then once you get through the personal information, you work your way, personal address, city, state, zip code, all those things. Then you put in what we call just additional personal information, which is all protected, proprietary information like social, driver's license number, cell phone number. Then you have a source of income, whether you're employed, self-employed, or retirement. These are drop-down bars here. It tells us what your education level is: high school, associate, bachelor's, graduate degree, vocational training, OJT, apprenticeship. So there's multiple drop-down bars, but you get to basically just select those and go through. And then here we talk about some of our community wealth building questions that are part of our application. What percentage of management or board representation is Black, Indigenous, people of color? And you get to basically select a range there. It's a 5-tier range. And then you get to go through and answer the question: does your business offer employee profit sharing or equity option pools? And then it says yes with multiple levels. And then also, of course, no if you don't offer it. And then basically how many employees earn a minimal livable wage. Well, before inflation, you could basically, for Indianapolis, about $11. So we may have to increase that to about 12 to 13, but nationally about $15 an hour. But of course, the Midwest is a little bit less expensive to live. And so you can put that information there. Here, you can add a photo. We do have one, and then here, this tab here allows you to upload documents. And then there's just, a couple questions here about submitting the application, which is basically what we call attestations or certifications in terms of what you understand, what you've presented here, your age, that you're, US resident, you're over the age of 18, all of those sorts of things. And so you basically, I'm just going to hit fill in with random data just for these purposes. And then, so you kind of get to see what that looks like in there. And no, that's not a photo of me. And so here, I'm going to click these. And then I'm going to hit submit application. So now the application is submitted. Now you can always go in and make changes. You can go back in and add documents. On our side, of course, because we monitor that impact fund at Kepler.org email, we'll get a message saying that, hey, there's an application that's waiting for approval. And then that's when we get into that process and everything that we described earlier. So we've got about 10 minutes, we're at 7:20. So I'm gonna close this out here and then turn it back over for us to wrap up with our Q&A. And
anyone who may have questions, you can either raise your hand or drop those in the chat. I'll start with one question, Nicholas, while everybody is formulating their questions. From start to finish, how long does the application approval and receiving of funds typically take for the RLP?
So right now we're trying to keep that between 3 to 6 weeks. I'm looking in the chat. Appreciate you, Damon. You put some more links in there as well.
And as other people are forming their questions, there's information in chat about the Alchemy program website, email, as well as KIF and the RLP website and email as well. So definitely, if you're at that point, click on the email us to get that initial interview meeting set up and get you on board and going.
So yeah, the
I
impact.
have a question, Nicholas.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm asking this question for people who may have the same question. So although we're not looking at credit scores as a determinant for qualifying for these loans, will credit be pulled, and will it be a hard pull or a soft pull?
So what we've what we've done in the underwriting guidelines is we've asked people to, a lot of people are monitoring their own credit through like, Credit Karma or other applications, so they can actually forward and download an initial credit application for us and just send it and upload it with the application. That way we don't have to do the soft pull or a hard pull. So as long as it's within the last 30 days, we can use the credit report that they pull. Some people will go and, create an Experian or Equifax account, or like I said, Credit Karma, myfico.org or .com. So just any of those will do. Thank you for that question, Khalil.
We have a new question in the chat. And if you could stop share so we can see everybody. Nicholas, how was the loan amount range determined? RLP, the 5 to 15K?
Stop share real quick. All right. I think I got everybody out back into a normal boxes. So the dollar amounts, what we were looking at was, one, we want, it's a managing of basically a lot of different things. One, it's the source of funding and the uses that we want to try to outline. So that was part of the, one of the variables is that, we're trying to promote access to capital, but we're also trying to promote access to capital in a way that attracts other capital. So we're really looking to try to leverage capital from other entities. And so that was part of the analysis. The other part was looking at, a lot of our startups and early stage businesses that have been, and we consider startup anyone who's been in business for 3 years or less, looking at those dollar amounts in terms of access to capital, what that looks like in terms of working in concert with a micro loan or some type of other type of funding, maxing out, access to capital to friends, family, and maybe personal savings, if those are available. And then also looking at some of the different activities that we're looking at. Like, we know that the market was talking about a lot of need for like purchase order financing, contract financing, getting help with getting things like insurance, mobilization costs to get businesses started. And generally speaking, that 5 to 15 for a lot of small businesses was enough to make a difference, whether in a standalone or as part of a co-lending investment opportunity.
Another question in the chat. This is great, thanks. Do you have a goal or number of loans or total dollar amount to put into the community? Yeah, and I think there's a larger 3-year initiative there too. So maybe speak towards that.
Yeah, so this initial rollout, we're going to try to move, approximately $300,000. And then, of course, over the course of the next probably 6 months, we're going to see some significant activity in terms of, not only adding to the toolbox, but then adding, bringing in other products. Because we talked about a toolbox that had multiple, debt and equity products, this being one. And then, of course, trying to, over the course of the next 3 years, build the integrated fund, the Kepler integrated fund, to really have about, $20 million to put into the community and support, enterprises and initiatives, across the, Indianapolis community. So that's basically where we're headed. And this is like step 2. I think Pabana spoke about step 1 with some of the grants that were provided during the early part of the pandemic.
Any other questions? We've got about 4 minutes, so please shoot them. We got answers.
But yeah, in the first 12 months, I would say, 5 million. And then the second year, months 13 through 24, another 10 million, and then another 5 million in that third year. So over the course of 3 years, about 20 million is what we're looking to invest. And again, it'll be multiple different products that'll be funded, using those resources.
Hey, Marcel. OG, I see your hands up. Always love to hear from you.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, I have two questions. Well, the second is a confirmation. The first question that I have is, after when you selected 3 to 6 months, 3 to 12 months repayment option, and you choose that option, when would the first payment be due after the disbursement of the loan funds? That's my first question. Second is just a confirmation. You had mentioned about that, really and this goes back to the question the young lady asked. There will be a soft hit on our credit for giving a credit report. I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding that completely.
Okay. So to going back to the first question, I want to be clear that the funding, it's again, it's partially the second question as well, but it's not based on a particular credit score. We don't have a minimum or a maximum or anything in between. And so what we do is we offer the applicant the opportunity to provide their own credit report. We don't have one in particular that we're particularly married to, whether it's Experian, Equifax, or TransUnion. I think most people know that. I think the last number I've seen from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is that 90% of credit reports have errors in them. So that's, for us, the credit report is a conversational piece. It kind of more so, okay, let's make sure we understand the history, and then, let's see where you're at today, and then figure out, what the plan is in terms of where you're headed. And then we just want to kind of make sure we understand the totality of that, right? It's more, again, going back to M and Pabana's opening, it's about relationships. So, as long as we know how things are currently stand, I think that's basically what the credit report is, to help document for us. And then what was the other piece one more time for us so I can answer it quickly?
The other question, my first one was, after the disbursement of funds, when would the first payment be due?
Okay. So it's based on a balloon payment structure. So literally, if you pick 6 months, you have 0 payments for 6 months, but the entire loan comes due at the end of the 6 months, both principal and interest. So there's no interim payments unless you volunteer or you elect to make the interest payment. We'll take it if that's what you want to do, and there's no prepayment penalty as well. So you're not penalized that if you get a big contract 3 months into a 12-month term, if you choose to just pay it off.
So in short, and in gist, a person that needs some capital for whatever reason that's needed with this loan, if they took this loan out, and let's just say, for example, they took 6 months and they utilized the fund to increase their business in some manner, at the end of 6 months with these funds, if they have got the same amount or the loan amount profited, is just about paying that back with interest. Is this correct? With no payments in between the disbursement and the term that they chose to receive it. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, I mean, you make a selection of a term. Of course, I mean, the committee has to agree with that term as well. So if you select 12, but the committee offers you 9, so that could be something that would be different. Or if you select 0% and the committee agrees to give you 1% because they feel like, based on, the projections and past, financial successes, that you can afford to pay the 1% because one of the biggest components that allows this program to be a community wealth builder is that it's a revolving loan fund program. So when that first 300,000 goes out the door, we're hoping that it's going to select the next set of entrepreneurs that need that similar type of capital, and then the entrepreneurs that we help with the RLP in 2022, they'll graduate and use some of the other products that we'll have rolled out here by the third, fourth quarter of this year, and afterwards. So yeah, it's meant to be self-sustaining, and it's meant to be have a restorative element to it, that we're trying to restore and bring back community and give entrepreneurs every opportunity as much as we can, and as much as the deal allows us to, but we try to give you the best terms that we possibly can.
And for those that want to pay back 5, 10, 15, 20% on top, we accept that as well too. Knowing that it's going back to entrepreneurs that follow, paying for it.
Exactly. Really good question. I know it might feel different, but I've been trying to get a program like this out in the community for probably like about 25 years. So that basically tells you, a lot of these programs just don't exist. So I can understand, especially if you've, you're not going to see this on any traditional bank's website. You're not going to see a whole bunch of CDFIs who I've been around the biggest of them in all over this country. They don't offer this kind of opportunity as well. So again, this is a charitable loan fund. There's a purpose beyond just the financial component that drives how these products are created.
So with that, I want to share that it's 7:34, and I looked in the chat. I don't see any more questions, so I think we should turn it back over to M to close us out.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. It was very impressive. I learned a whole lot of things about stuff I knew nothing about, and I'm looking forward to continuing our co-creation and building community wealth. Holla at you. Peace, and enjoy your evening.
Oh, and I do want to say, y'all, if y'all want to support what we're doing, hit that button, donate.kepper.org, and support the Kepper Integrated Fund. Thank you all.
Tell all your family and friends, pass the word around. This video will be available in the morning. Shouts out. See you the next one. Peace.